explaining my Java program. So this program is a user registration and a login system. So this allows the user to enter its personal information. It also registers the username, the password, and the phone number. And also it has a loop. For example, if the user incorrectly puts his username or his password or his phone number, it is going to repeat until the user puts his correct username, password, and or phone number. Right. So the program is divided into three. So we have the main class, we have the login details class, and then we have the JUnit testing. So I'm going to first start with the main class. So this is the package. So the package is named registration 105 13207 part 1. And this is the package where I created the project. Right. The public class. This is the main class where the execution starts. So this is where all the coding happens, most of it. Right. Then we have the public static void main string. So this is the main method, and this basically this is the Java starts running from this program onwards, right? Then we have the scanner input new scanner system.in. So this basically creates a scanner object so that the user can put its own input using the user's keyboard. Then underneath the scanner's input equals to new scanner, we have the login details user equals to new login details. So this basically it creates an object of the login detail so that it can use the validation and the login methods. Then we have the entering of the name. So firstly, I started with system out.println. Print ln. So ln stands for line. So that means that this enter your name will be on its own line. If I remove the ln, all of this code here will be next to this. This would look neat, and it wouldn't applaud the user. So that's why I use ln so that it can be on its own separate line. Now we have enter second name. So this is where the person enters his surname or his middle name. The user enters his surname or his username. Then the most important thing is registering the loop. So this is the loop, right? This is a very important feature because it stores the result of the registration. So the string register message equal to two semicolon no, not semicolons, inverted commas. This basically like it stores the result of the registration. Okay, then we come to the loop, which is the while. So this loop here, the while loop, basically it forces the user to keep trying until the registration is successful. So it basically makes it basically improves it by the usability, so that the incorrect data is not accepted and the new correct data must be accepted. Then we have our registration input, where we have to either enter our username, our password, or our phone number. So for example, for our username, we would have uh, we would put the user would put his username here. Same thing with the password. You would put a valid password here, a strong password. Same with his phone number. You would enter his phone number, but he should start with +27, as that is the country code for the phone number. Then we have the register method call. So this is the register method call, and basically this sends the input to the register user method. So basically this checks if the username format is correct, if the password is strong, and if the phone format is correct. So then after that it returns either a successful message or it returns a error message. Okay, then we come to the failed registration message, so which is the if here. So this happens if, for example, the registration fails, then it will show an error message to be displayed, right? And if the message is correct, then it will show user registered successfully. Then we have the login loop. This is the most important one because, for example, doesn't if the user keeps on if the user like for example he enters a wrong phone number or username or password, this would not have a loop, meaning that it won't continue the loop, meaning it will just end as unsuccessful, which this program does, which I don't want the program to do. So I want to ensure that or like that even the incorrect password should be put again until it is correct. So basically, it's like a variable that tracks the login success. It is either successful or unsuccessful. I've also used while again because even though I used while here for the registering the message, I use the while as for the login status. This it has the same significance as the other while, but it just forces the user to enter the correct information or the correct details, because it's important because it's like a real world security system. Basically, it keeps the code safe. Even after entering it wrong, it wants you to have the correct correct information so that the work is saved properly. Then we have our login input, right, where it says enter your username, enter your password. So this is basics where the user enters its input, its username and its password. Then we have our login status user dot login user. So this is where I call the method, and basically it checks if the login matches the stored registration data. So, for example, I entered my name, or I entered my second name, and then I entered my username. So it checks if it stores the username, because if it doesn't store the username, that means I will have to keep on entering the username as well, even though it is right. So that's the motive of this. It's opening the method. Sorry, calling the method. Then we have our system.printin user.return login status. So this basically prints out if the login is successful or it has failed. Then at the end of the program, I have done a welcoming message. So here is once the user has entered the right enter the first name, second name, the correct username, the correct password, and the correct phone number, the username will be able to see this welcoming message where it will say welcome the user's first name and the second name, and it will have a nice message saying that they have finally done the correct thing by entering the correct username and password or phone number. Okay, now we have the login details class. So this class basically it contains all the validation logins. So what like validation login is like for example what the username should consist of, what the password should consist of, and what the phone number should consist of, and if it doesn't consist of that, what it should enter, what should be the output, what should be like the message, right? So so here are the variables: the private string username and the private string password. So these these variables, they just store the registered users details. So here I use private because I don't want other people to see the user's username and password. I could have made it public, but it wouldn't be as effective as private. Then I use the public boolean check username. So basically, this checks the username's rules. So like underneath the public boolean, you can see if. So the if is a method. It's not a method, but it's like a code that shows that the username should consist a underscore and that it should consist of five or less characters. So here this means five or less characters. So if the user does all of this correct, it will print out username successfully captured. If it does it wrong, it will return false, and it will return this as the message. It's the same thing with public boolean check password complexity. So this checks if the password is strong or weak, right? Same here. I've entered the variables. The boolean has capital, boolean has number, and boolean has special variables. So this is what the password must consist of before it has a positive message. Right. So why did I use the for loop? So I use the for loop because each character each character in the password must be checked. So even if I wrote capital PARV at no number, it shows, okay, at least that there's at least there's a capital and at least there's a number, but at least there's a special variable, but there's no number. That means it must return as a false. Same thing in these variables here. I've used three ifs. For characters uppercase, is digit and is letter O digit. So basically it checks if the password has an uppercase, if it has a digit, if it has a number, and if it has a letter O digit as a special variable. So it must consist of these three things. But it mustn't only consist of these three. It must also follow these rules. It must have at least 8 characters. It must have a capital letter. It must have a number, and it must have a special variable. So basically, if the password consists of all of these things here, that means that the password is correct and it will print out this. But if it's missing any of these three, any of these four, then it will read this long error message where the user has to fix it and it will return false. Then we have the cell phone validation, right? So whenever the user is entering its cell phone, it will always start with the South African code +27 and must be at least and must be the correct length. So it should be at least 12 characters long. And if correct, it will do the same as how it was doing um, in the check password complexity and the check username. It will, if it's correct, it will have this, it will return true. If it does not, then it will have a cell phone number is correct incorrectly formatted and it will return false. Then we have another method where it the register user method. So basically what that does is this method here, it validates all the inputs. It also returns the error messages if it's invalid, and also stores the values if it's valid, right? Here, if you same here we go. Here it's if and if. So here it will check if it has a correct username, if it has a correct password, if it has the correct phone number. So after all of these validations are correct or entered, it will then come to this section here where it will check that the correct username has all of has a underscore and is less than 5 or 5, and that it is that the password has all the requirements and the phone number has all the requirements. Then we have our username equals to username, password is equal to password. This basically stores the valid user's details, right? Then we have our login method. So this um, this is our login method. So this checks if the matches the stored detail, the stored data. Then we have our if status is equal to true. So once all of these things are done, it will check if the login is successful or login has failed. So it basically will return a message if it's a successful login or failed login. And that will be the end of the login details class. Now we're going to go to the test class. So the JUnit testing is basically like automatic testing. It just tests each methods if it gives the right criteria. So for example, if the user puts in the correct username like this one here, will it be correct? Will it be a success? And if it isn't a success, then it will it will show as a error message. So here we have 12, and at if you can notice, at each method we have assert true, assert false, and we have assert equals. So, and also they all look the same, 1, 2, and 3, but there's one difference. We have add test. So the add test makes a test, it marks like a test method, right? Then we have assert true. This basically means that if it checks if the results are true, then here it checks if the results are false, and here it checks if the and for assert equals, it checks if it's expected, or it is if it is actual, if it's the actual output, right? So in the 14 methods, in the 12 method, the test login success and the test login fail. So basically the test login success, it checks if the login is if it works. Then the test login fail, it checks if the wrong login fails. Then the username correct, if it has a valid username. Here, if the username is invalid, here it checks if the password is strong, and then here it checks if the password is not strong or maybe weak. Then here, where it says phone number, it checks if it is a correct phone number. It consists of, you know, the +27 and the length of the phone number, and checks if it's incorrect. Then we have our test registration success. It checks if the whole thing, of the whole registration is a success. And then it also checks if the username is a fail, it will have an invalid username. If the password fails, then the password is invalid, and if the phone fails, then it has an invalid phone, right? So what are the insights for these three classes? Basically, what is the summary of these three classes? Basically, it's in this program, I'm just putting the input handles, I'm putting the validation systems, I'm putting the loops, so that, for example, if the user puts in the wrong information, the program must make sure that the user must put it again until it's correct. So the examples of the loops are like while, or for loops that was used in the login details right here. One second. That were used in right here. The for loops. This basically, the loop shows that even with the correct information, even with the incorrect information, it's still going to loop it again until corrected. So basically, this program ensures that the valid users can register and log in successfully, and that all the registration is correct. Thank you. Okay, now I've explained all three classes. Now we're going to run the class. Before we run the class, we must always build and clean. People might be asking, what is build and clean? Build and clean makes sure that the code in your program is correct. It doesn't have any failures, it doesn't have any errors, and it isn't skipped. So here, as we can see, we have built and clean, and we can see that there are 12 test runs, meaning with nose we have 0 errors, 0 failures, and 0 skipped, showing that this is a build success. Here you will get a message saying build success. Now, also, whenever we are doing using the JUnit testing for testing, we must always check if the test actually works, because sometimes what happens is we write our method here and we write our codes here, but the thing doesn't work. So with my 12 methods, I have next to it we have a play button. So here we will press the play button and we will run the test login success method. So now the output will run, and here we will see tests. So now we can see all the information username has been successfully captured. There's a test run with 0 failures, 0 errors, and skipped 0. So we can know that, okay, now it is correct. Now, we can't do it for each and every one. So what we're going to do is we're going to build and run this whole thing again, first and twice, because sometimes what happens is the program doesn't run the first time. So here you can see it's a build failure. So we do it again until it's correct. As we can see here, everything is correct. We can see that the tests are running. It ran 12 times until it was all of it was correct. We ran 12, we had zero failures and we had zero errors. To check if the code is correct, we'll right click, we'll go to test file, and while it's testing, we will see a pop-in. So we'll go to open test and we can see all 12 tests have passed. If it is a zero, meaning that there's an error, meaning that these tests aren't running. As we can see, the tests are running because it says tests passed and 100%. That means the JUnit is working and all our codes are running. So meaning if the user puts in a correct or incorrect password, it will show that it will result that this is wrong, please do it again, or this is correct. Now, we've put in all the codes, but we haven't seen it running. So now we're going to run. As I said, whenever we are about to run the code, we must always build and clean to make sure that the code is clean and there isn't any viruses. Sorry, not viruses, any errors or failures. So we can see here, it is done. Now we are going to run the code. So here, the user will enter his name, he will enter his second name, then he will enter his username. So as we can see, capital letter, underscore, and a number, password. As we can also see here, capital letter, we got a number, we got a special character, and we must whenever we're doing a phone number, we must add the 27. And for example, if we put the number as 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 and we enter, it shows us everything is correct. But why is it repeating it again? Because it's making sure that the username that you planted the first time is correct the second time. So now if we, for example, we put PARV and underscore one and we enter and we put the password wrong, we can see that the login has failed because this and this isn't the same and this isn't the same. So now if I still put it wrong, you can see even though this isn't like this, it still says login. So even if I put it 1,000 times, it will show login failed until I get it right. So now if I write it the correct way, we can see that the login is successful. Why? Because I put the exact username and the exact password right here. Exact username, exact password with login successful. We've gotten a welcoming message saying yay, and we have done the code. That means the full outcome is that the codes are running, the test is 100% passing, and the program is running. Thank you for watching this video, and please like and subscribe.